Yeah, so as Janie mentioned, our new product that we've been developing with QBE, it's called SOVA Cyber Profiler, and it's a new tool that helps organizations understand their cyber risk from an attacker's perspective. So with the remaining time, what I really want to do is briefly explain to you what cyber profiling is, how it forms the first stages of a ransomware or any cyber attack, and then just walk you through one of my favorite ransomware attack techniques that we've seen. Okay, so let's do it. So first of all, what is cyber profiling? So it's basically like the reconnaissance part of a mission. You're trying to find out as much about a target as possible, or you're just collecting information which will enable you to select a target. Either way, it's done by gathering the enormous amount of publicly available data that is out there and using this open source intelligence, often shortened to OSINT, to determine weaknesses and the best routes of entry into a system. By just using a domain, you can actually collate a large amount of useful information about a company's online presence across a number of different verticals. And this can be done relatively easily just using a mixture of automated tools and clever analysis. So what we've been doing is trying to use these techniques for good. We've created a set of tools like Cyber Profiler and trained a number of OSINT specialists to help us give clients that attacker's eye view. We've designed this with insurers and brokers in mind to help reduce risk on their books and just generally reduce vulnerabilities in any way we can. We support clients through this journey to cyber resilience through clear and helpful remediation steps, an easy to understand report, and access to our Cyber Profiler portal where they can log in, track their progress, and also reach out to us for any guidance they require. Just quickly show you some screenshots so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. This is the customer homepage with some high-level overview of their latest report. They can view their report online within the portal as well as download it. And this is also a login page that we offer to insurers where they can see everyone on their books that's been put through, quickly see who's doing okay and who may need some assistance. So that's Cyber Profiler in a nutshell. It's already driving some great user engagement, as Jenny mentioned, with cyber risk, and hopefully, yeah, should yield some great results for insurers and insureds. So what I want to do now is just walk through an attack technique with you. This is similar to a number of attacks we've seen in cases, and I'm hoping to give you an understanding of how attackers think and the effort that goes into these sophisticated attacks. I'm also a bit of a nerd, and I think it's pretty cool to know how this all happens, so I hope you do too. A quick disclaimer, things might get a little bit technical, but I'll try to explain everything as clearly as possible, so, you know, just hold on to your hats. So, Proxy Shell. This is a name for a cyber attack technique that exploits 3 vulnerabilities on Microsoft Exchange servers. Microsoft Exchange servers are business email servers, so they generally contain lots of juicy data, which is a great prize for any cyber attacker. It was discovered in April this year and is similar to Proxy Logon and also the Hafnium attacks, Hafnium being the cyber criminal outfit believed to be sponsored by the Chinese government. As mentioned, we've seen this technique or similar in a number of cases. And despite the vulnerabilities being in the public domain, some for sort of over a year now, people are either still not aware of it, or if they are aware, they just don't seem to be fixing the problem. In fact, an earlier incarnation of this attack, the FBI actually had to forcibly gain access to a number of US companies' infrastructures and go in and remove the malicious software themselves. So this kind of gives you an idea of how serious it is and the lack of awareness or sort of apathy there seems to be towards it. So like a number of these attacks, it can be broken down into 3 steps. First of all, gaining initial access to the server, and then elevation of privileges, which basically means logging yourself in as a user who has permissions to do all the things that you need to do. And then finally, deployment of malicious payload. So the first step uses the snappily titled vulnerability CVE 2021-34473. Or for non-robots, pre-auth path confusion leads to ACL bypass. Arguably just as confusing. The main thing you need to know is CVE stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, and this is just a database of publicly disclosed information security issues. So once a vulnerability from a piece of software is discovered, they add it to this database so everyone is aware and can fix accordingly. At least you hope they do. So the vulnerability in this step takes advantage of a Microsoft Exchange feature called explicit login, which ordinarily just allows you to display a user's mailbox or calendar using a single URL if you want to embed it, for example. And so what someone discovered is that by manipulating this URL, you're actually able to remove part of it, and then you'll just get routed to whatever path remains. So in this example, you can see the auto-discover part of the URL is going to be replaced and simply becomes the path at the bottom, which is just a location on the server. So by using this, you can just connect to an Exchange server at this location. Hopefully you're still all with me. So step 1 complete. I should just say this can easily be prevented by just being aware of this vulnerability in the first place. This is something that Cyber Profiler will detect for you and report back. So on to step 2, elevation of privileges. As I mentioned, the first thing you kind of want to do on a machine generally is log in as a user that has sufficient permissions to do all the tasks that you want to do. So ideally an administrator or something similar. In a proxy shell attack, this can be done via the thoughtfully titled elevation of privilege on Exchange PowerShell backend. So this took advantage of another Exchange feature called Powershell Remoting, which essentially just allows a user to send and read email and update configurations from the command line. In this piece of functionality, the system will look to authenticate a user based on a common access token. If it can't find that, it will fall back to a different header, which actually, if you have access to the backend directly, which we do following the previous step, you can actually set this header value as anything you want, meaning you're able to impersonate any user. So in this situation, we set ourselves to the Exchange admin, and that'll do quite nicely. So that's step 2 complete. So we now have shell access to the server, and we're logged in as an admin, and we've been able to do this just by exploiting 2 vulnerabilities that are publicly visible and can easily be remediated as long as you're aware of them. So this leads us on to the final step, which is uploading the malicious payload. This is made possible by the very useful post-auth arbitrary file write leads to RCE, one of my favorites. RCE stands for remote code execution, and it basically describes a program that allows attackers to run malicious code on a server remotely. And so in this case, you can do this using the new mailbox export request. And this is just a function that essentially just allows you to create a file on the server. And quite usefully, in this case, this file is actually a mailbox. So once you've created that file, you can then just send an encoded payload to it. When the server tries to save this payload, it will then decode it into malicious code, and then it will run the code. And then, unfortunately, at that point, they gotcha. So all 3 steps are now complete. As I mentioned, all easily prevented by just being aware of the vulnerabilities out there. So to try and summarize all of that, I think the main points to take away are really all these information about CVEs are publicly available. In this case, Microsoft has actually acknowledged them and released patches which will fix the problem. So people just, you just need to be aware. More worryingly as well, there are actually dedicated search engines out there, such as Showdown, for example. We can actually search for these vulnerabilities by name, and it will show you systems that may be affected. And this is exactly what the attackers use. It's what we use as well. And it's basically what anyone can use to hunt down potential targets. Then finally, I just want to reiterate that Cyber Profiler will bring all of these issues to your attention. It's literally what it was built for. It will make you aware of a number of other things as well that can lead to different types of initial access and attacks, such as exposed ports for remote desktop attacks, different types of social engineering attacks as well. There's a number of things that I would like to go through today as well, but unfortunately we don't have the time. But if you have any questions about this or anything else, just get in touch with me after the event. I just wanted to end on a couple of terms that we like to use at Storm, and we use as a basis for describing best practice when it comes to cyber risk management in all our services. So the first term is security hygiene. Have good security hygiene. So have methodical maintenance procedures around updating technologies. Don't leave CVEs unpatched, for example. Have a clear, sensible security guidelines that everyone is aware of, and more importantly, that everyone adheres to as well. Remove unused services, and you'll just greatly reduce the risk of forgotten systems. And these are prime targets for attackers, that any systems that aren't being consistently monitored. Second point I just wanted to bring to your attention is be secure by default. Enforced multi-factor authentication as standard. I cannot stress that enough. And just good DNS record management. Appropriately configured DNS records by default can just significantly reduce the risk of fraud and also phishing attacks, which is another common way people are tricked into downloading ransomware. If you can build a company culture based around these principles, we think it will lead to like a very cyber resilient business and a significant reduction in the likelihood of suffering an incident such as ransomware or any other. So that is all from me. Thank you very, very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. My email is up on the screen here, but I think it will be made available after the event as well. So thank you very much.